You are listening to an Honor Level production featuring the Resurrection of Marcus Mosiah Garvey series.
All pirates, yes, they rob I, sold I to the merchant ships. Minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit.
Welcome to Black History Month. Now, for the first time ever, we're going to gain a special insight into the philosophy and opinions of one of the greatest men to have ever walked this earth. We're going to be celebrating a remarkable life and legacy over the next 31 days as I bring you the resurrection of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, a series which will be presented by myself, Jermaine Brown, featuring 31 brothers from our community, all chosen to resurrect speeches from Marcus Garvey daily. So now, before we get into today's speech, I must give you some handy information, food for thought. Marcus Garvey was the founder and organizer of the largest independent black movement in the world, the Universal Negro Improvement Association and the African Communities League. And at the heights of success, the organization had a worldwide membership of over 11 million subscribed members. Now, this was an excellent feat, especially when we consider that this happened during a time of no internet, no smartphones, and no social media. And to top it all off, here's the icing on the cake. It was in the midst of 2 world wars. Now, I can't even get a following like that on Instagram and Snapchat, and that's supposed to be easy. Easy, yeah? But he dared to travel the world, even to non-English speaking regions, spreading his message of unity, self-love and empowerment. This was during a time when it was particularly dangerous for black men and women to even wander outside of their own homes. But these factors did not stop the man and his movement, for he had at his disposal an unmatched confidence. He didn't fear failure. He didn't care about the laughter and the ridicule hurled at him, for he had a fearless passion for the advancement of black people worldwide that fueled his mission. Now, I'm intrigued to know more about the mind of this man and how he accomplished so much. What can I take from him that I can apply to my life today?
On a level.
How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look?
This is program 20 of our series. Today we have a special treat. It was an article that Garvey wrote 106 years ago, and we've turned this article, The British West Indies in the Mirror of Civilization, into a speech. Now, this was one of Garvey's earliest writings on record, and it provides you with a snapshot of Garvey's early ideas around Caribbean history. It was written for the African Times and Orient Review in London, October 1913, when he was just 26 years of age. Today's narration is by Denniston Stewart from Birmingham, UK.
You are listening to an Honor Level production featuring the Resurrection of Marcus Mosiah Garvey series.
In these days when democracy is spreading itself over the British Empire, and the peoples under the rule of the Union Jack are freeing themselves from hereditary lordships and an unjust bureaucracy, it should not be amiss to recount the condition of affairs in the British West Indies, and particularly in the historic island of Jamaica, one of the oldest colonial possessions of the Crown. It is right that the peoples of the vast empire to which these colonies belong should be correctly informed on things affecting the welfare of these islands, being a comparatively neglected, if not unknown region of the Atlantic archipelago. The history of the British possession of these islands is very interesting, as it reveals the many conflicts between the various powers that have been struggling for occupancy and supremacy in the Caribbean waters for 300 years. These islands were discovered by Christopher Columbus in the latter part of the 14th century, and a major portion of them were handed over to the Spanish throne. England and France laid claim to certain of these colonies, and the former with her justifiable means of warfare, succeeded in driving the Spaniards from their tropical gold mines with much regret on the part of the ejected, who had extinguished the Aborigines, an action quite in keeping with the European custom of depopulating new lands of their Aboriginal tribes. The British West Indian colonies today comprise Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, British Guyana, Grenada, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Dominica, Antigua and Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, the Virgin Islands, and one or two others scattered over the groups known as the Greater and Lesser Antilles, with a population of over 3 million souls. When the Spaniards took possession of these islands, they introduced cotton and sugar growing. To supply the labor that was necessary to make these industries solid and profitable, they started the slave trade with Africa, from which place they recruited thousands of Negro slaves, whom they took from their congenial homes by force. The sugar industry developed wonderfully with Negro labor, and the great output of sugar as exported to Europe brought incomputable wealth to the landed proprietors, which they used in gambling and feasting, and for exploration and further development of the veritable gold mines of the Western Hemisphere. Piratical and buccaneering parties used to frequent the waters of the Caribbean, where they held up on the high sea merchant vessels laden with their rich cargoes bound for Europe and the West Indies. Filibustering was carried on in a daring fashion on land, where a buccaneering invader would hold up one of these islands and force the wealthy landlords to capitulate on conditions suitable to filibustering requirements. During the 16th century, England drove the Spaniards from the wealthiest of these islands and established herself in possession to the plantations, as they were called. A large proportion of her criminal class was deported, as also a few gentlemen. The new occupiers took over the paying sugar industry, and with their superior knowledge of agriculture, gave a new impetus to it. These new owners found it necessary to replenish their laborers with new arrivals to foster the industry. Hence, an agreement was entered into with John Hawkins of infamous memory, who clandestinely obtained a charter from his sovereign to convey Negroes from Africa to the West Indies, thereby giving new life to the merciless trafficking human souls. Jamaica was the most flourishing of the British West Indian islands, and the ancient capital Port Royal, which has been submerged by earthquake, was said to be the richest spot on the face of the globe. The chief products of this colony were sugar and rum, but its assets were largely added to by its being the headquarters of European pirates and buccaneers, who took their treasures thither, where they gambled and feasted in great luxury. It is amusing to note that many of the pirates who traversed the West Indies had been deprived of their ears as a result of unsuccessful piratical encounters. Some of the early governors of these islands, such as Sir Henry Morgan, were known as subtle rogues and were themselves, at some time or another, pirates and buccaneers. Among the many piratical and buccaneering heroes or rogues, whichever you wish to call them, may be mentioned Teach, otherwise known as Blackbeard, Morgan, Hawkins, Rogers, Drake, Raleigh, Preston, Shirley, Jackson and Summers. Such terror did these villains strike in the heart of the people of these islands that up to the present day their names are held as auguries of fear among the people. It is common to hear a black or colored mother, in trying to frighten her child, count 1, 2, 3, 4 and then shout "Preston" and come, at which intimation the child runs away in terror. Owing to the limit of space, I shall confine myself to a few facts relating to the island of Jamaica. But I may say that the condition in the various islands are the same. and what is true of one is true of the whole. Jamaica became a colony of England in 1665 under Oliver Cromwell and has since remained under her control. The country has passed through many forms of local government. At one time, it was self-governing. Then it became a crown colony. For the last 20 years, it has enjoyed a semi-representative government with little power of control, the balance of power resting in the hands of the red tapists who pull the strings of colonial conservatism from Downing Street with a reckless disregard of the interests and wishes of the people. When the English took possession of this island, they exploited it agriculturally for all it's worth, which was a great lot. As I've already mentioned, they imported Negro slaves from Africa who tilled the soil under the severest torture and who are the real producers of the wealth that the country has contributed to the coffers of Europe and the pockets of English adventurers who in the early days were men of foul and inhuman characters. The slaves were inhumanly treated, being beaten, tortured, and scourged for the slightest offense. One of the primitive methods of chastisement was to dance the treadmill, an instrument that clipped off the toes when not danced to proper motion. In self-defense and revenge of such treatment, the slaves revolted on several occasions, but with little or no success. As being without arms, they were powerless in the face of the organized military forces of the ruling class. In 1851, the Negro slaves in one of the northwestern parishes of the island revolted, but were subdued, with a loss to the planting proprietors of over £750,000 sterling. They again revolted in 1865 in the east, under the leadership of the Honourable George William Gordon, a member of the Legislative Council, and Paul Bogle. They sounded the call of unmolested liberty, but owing to the suppression of telegraphic communication, they were handicapped and suppressed. Otherwise, Jamaica would be as free today as Haiti, which threw off the French yoke under the leadership of the famous Negro General Toussaint Louverture. The Gordon Party killed 15 of the native despots and a savage plutocrat by the name of Baron van Ketelhard, who had great control over the governor, Edward John Eyre. The victorious party hanged Gordon, Paul Bogle, and several hundred Negroes, for which crime Governor Eyre was recalled to England and indicted for murder, but escaped by the skin of his teeth. In 1834, a law was passed by the Imperial Parliament declaring all slaves within the British Empire free forever, with the promise that such slaves should undergo an apprenticeship for a few years. On the 1st of August 1838, the Negro slaves of the West Indies became free. 20 million sterling was paid to the planters by the imperial government for the emancipation of the people whom they had taken from their sunny homes in Africa. The slaves got nothing. They were liberated without money, proper clothing, food, or shelter. But with the characteristic fortitude of the African, they shouldered their burdens and set themselves to work, receiving scanty remuneration for their services. By their industry and thrift, they have been able to provide themselves with small holdings, which they are improving greatly to their credit. Since the abolition of slavery, the Negroes have improved themselves wonderfully, and when the government 20 or 30 years ago threw open the doors of the civil service to competitive examination, the Negro youth swept the board and captured every available office, leaving their white competitors far behind. This system went on for a few years, but as the white youths were found to be intellectually inferior to the black, the whites persuaded the government to abolish the competitive system and fill vacancies by nomination, and by this means kept out the black youths. The service has long since been recruited from an inferior class of sycophantic weaklings whose brains are exhausted by dissipation and vice before they reach the age of 35. The population of Jamaica, according to the last census, was white 15,605, black 630,181, colored 163,201, East Indian 17,380, Chinese 2,111, and 2,905 whose color is not stated. Thus, it can be seen that more than 2/3 of the population of Jamaica, as also of the other West Indian islands, are descendants of the old African slaves. The question naturally arises, how come this hybrid or colored element? This hybrid population is accountable for by the immoral advantage taken of the Negro women by the whites, who have always been in power and who practice polygamy with black women as an unwritten right. The old slave owners raped their female slaves, married or unmarried, and compelled them into polygamy, much against their will, thus producing the colored element. The latter-day whites, much to their regret, have not the opportunity of compelling black girls to become their mistresses, but they use other means of bewitching these unprotected women whom they keep as concubines, thus perpetuating the evil of which their fathers were guilty. The educated black gentleman naturally becomes disgusted with the state of affairs, and in seeking a wife, he generally marries a white woman. These are the contributing causes to the Negroid or hybrid population of the West Indies. Unlike the whites in the United States, the Negroes do not lynch white men when they rape and take advantage of black girls. They leave them to the hand of retributive justice. There have been several movements to federate the British West Indian Islands, but owing to parochial feelings, nothing definite has been achieved. Ere long this change is sure to come about, because the people of these islands are all one. They live under the same conditions, are of the same race and mind, and have the same feelings and sentiments regarding the things of the world. As one who knows the people well, I make no apology for prophesying that there will soon be a turning point in the history of the West Indies, and that the people who inhabit that portion of the Western Hemisphere will be the instruments of uniting a scattered race, who, before the close of many centuries, will found an empire on which the sun shall shine as ceaselessly as it shines on the empire of the North today. This may be regarded as a dream, but I would point my critical friends to history and its lessons. Would Caesar have believed that the country he was invading in 55 BC would be the seat of the greatest empire of the world? Had it been suggested to him, would he not have laughed at it as a huge joke? Yet it has come true. England is the seat of the greatest empire of the world, and its king is above the rest of monarchs in power and dominion. Laugh then you may at what I have been bold enough to prophesy, but as surely as there is an evolution in the natural growth of man and nations, so surely will there be a change in the history of these subjected regions.
You have just listened to an On a Level production.
I am Christopher Columbus. Just call me Chris. I am he who did miss the land, India. I thought I'd discover that which was never. How clever of me to see the land beyond. I came to tame and claim in the name of Spain. I am Chris. Don't diss my history. I inspired Hawkins, Livingston, Mussolini, Botha, Bush. I exterminated, perpetuated hatred against red men, yellow men. With black men I make no friend. I attack Arawak, cut off their head, wrote instead that the Caribs ate them like bread. I never told you this before, but my chief navigator was a Moor. You know the Moors. They discovered Spain, those blacks who came from the African terrain. The idea that the world was round, I got from these same blacks in some little Spanish town. Now you may ask, what was blacks doing there? But they ruled us for over 700 years. They made a great mistake then. Instead of enslaving us, they made us their friend. Some survived, stayed alive, fought the invasion, European division, English aggression, the fight between Europe and European expansion. I wrote your history for you. Did not tell you true. Not all black men came as slaves. Listen, you will know the truth in the waves that brought the ships. Lips lie to keep intact oppression of black skin. A sin, a myth. I am Chris. The church perched on the opportunity to spread the religion of the dead. True misconception, the assumption that this world was new. The wind blew us to save the earth from beasts like men. Friend, I am not. Blot out the spot and claim they are men like us. I am Christopher Columbus. I gave Europe power over all the earth. 500 years of your blood, sweat, and tears. Now you celebrate. Recreate your death. Let the glasses touch with the blood of your fathers and mothers. Give a toast. Oast my arrival. Your dying, my survival. The land is still mine. The Pope is still the divine. Yes, drink your own blood. Call it wine. Nothing in the pages of my history will blot out your misery. You shall celebrate my victory. Your children praise me. I am their only history. I am Christopher Columbus. I died, but you made me live. Give me the sea once more. Let me discover you again. The stain, my father's son's rule. Fool, you celebrate my coming. I will not go, not from your mind. Restore me for all to see. Keepers of life, shepherds of my people. Lead them to the altar of lies. Your ancestors' cries will not be heard. Word after word, pages of history written, the victims are once more bitten. 1492, to you, the beginning of Western world democracy. 1492, to me, the beginning of white supremacy.
On a level.
And after so much years, we still a cry tears. From half our foot them take the chain. Now it seems them put it power.
You've just been listening to the British West Indies in the Mirror of Civilization, delivered 1913 by Marcus Garvey. This concludes day 20 of our 31-part series, and we'd just like to thank Denniston Stewart for today's resurrection. Now, Denniston has been a performance poet for over 20 years on issues that concern communities in Birmingham. His performances are often done in patois and English. He conducts workshops in schools and other community events. For Denniston, Marcus Garvey is a unique champion of black upliftment and has been a pivotal icon who he has admired for a long time, finding that many of his speeches are spellbinding. We welcome your comments, opinions, and feedback on your experience with the Resurrection of Marcus Mosiah Garvey series so far. Should you wish to share with us by email, you can do so by contacting us at onalevel@hotmail.co.uk. That's on-a-level@hotmail.co.uk.
We want to be free.
Throughout this series, we are paying homage to Marcus Mosiah Garvey. However, no one man is an island. So we take this moment to also pay homage to Marcus Garvey's parents, Mama Sarah Jane Richards and Pops Marcus Garvey Sr. We also pay homage to those esteemed ancestors who paved the way for Marcus to appear on the world stage. We pay homage and gratitude to all the graduates of African School of Philosophy and all of its founding members and supporters of the UNIA. We pay homage and special tribute to his esteemed wife, Amy Jakes Garvey, who was a formidable leader in her own right. Mrs. Garvey kept her husband's legacy alive, and it's partly because of her loving efforts that we can even share this groundbreaking historical series with you today. Tune in tomorrow at the same time for the resurrection of Marcus Mosiah Garvey with me, Jermaine Brown. I'm going to leave you with the famous anthem that Marcus Garvey and the UNIA members had wanted to be adopted as the universal anthem for black people across the globe. Now let's take a moment to listen and feel free to wave your flag should you have one. RBG.
Up your mighty race, you can accomplish what you will.
All for you, mighty nation, you can accomplish what you will.
Ethiopia, thou land of our fathers, thou land where the gods love to be. A storm cloud at night suddenly gathers, all armies come rushing to thee. We must in the fight be victorious, when swords are thrust outward to gleam. For us will the victory be glorious, when led by the red, black and green. Advance, advance to victory, let Africa be free. Advance to meet the foe, advance to meet the foe, with the might of the red, the black and the green, with the might of the red, the black and the green. O Jehovah, thou God of the ages, grant unto our sons that need the wisdom thou gave to thy sages when Israel was sore in need. Thy voice to the dim past has spoken, Ethiopia shall stretch forth her hand. By thee shall all fetters be broken, and heaven bless our dear motherland. Advance, advance.